Hi, everybody. My name is Asha, and I'm a compulsive eater and bulimic, and I weigh and measure 3 meals a day from the gray sheet. I write them down, I commit them to a sponsor. I don't eat in between no matter what, and abstinence is the foundation of my life today. I didn't really necessarily prepare for this. My story is long. I joined Gray Sheet in 2005, and as of last February, had 20 years back to back abstinence. And then I went for a stem cell transplant. And I really wanted to keep my abstinence through that. And I did not keep my day count. I was graced to be able to avoid descending into the food. I didn't, because I think because I didn't eat grains and sugars, and I think that that's the one thing that saved me. But I did binge on gray sheet foods, and the only thing I can say about that is I definitely had a commitment to staying abstinent, but I feel like my brain was so foggy that I didn't understand the instructions I was given. And I think that I also didn't ask and clarify. So that's the part that I need to take ownership of. But it was hard. It was really hard. I couldn't think straight. I was sleeping 16 hours a day. It was crazy. Yeah. So I've been through a lot of no matter what's in abstinence, but this is definitely was the biggest one. It was October 14th of last year um, that I was diagnosed with a rare blood cancer called myelofibrosis, and I walked into the hematologist's office, and I'm like, could my blood test being off be why I'm so tired all the time? And he's like, sit down. And he said, you need a bone marrow transplant. And we spent the next 3 weeks figuring out what this thing was and how it was treated. And I didn't, I'm a nurse with a master's degree. I didn't know anything about this. I didn't understand how bone marrow transplants worked nowadays, which oddly enough is not a surgery as it was decades ago. It's actually a transfusion of new stem cells. But first, they give you chemo. In 4 days, you get enough chemo to wipe out all of your own blood cells and stem cells. So you end up really with nothing while you're waiting for the new stem cells to take root and do their thing. And I don't even know what day it was in the whole process that I stopped actually weighing and measuring my food. My husband did everything he could to help me. My sponsor did everything she could to help me. And there was just a point at which I couldn't think straight. I couldn't walk. I couldn't get out of bed, because there were no red blood cells. There was no hemoglobin. They had to give me transfusions, which is normal part of this process. Um, the good news is I was able to get back on within a few weeks. As far as weighing and measuring, I started to have enough energy to do that, to really be able to concentrate well enough to do that. And so May 23rd is my new abstinence date. And I came to a lot of these meetings actually while I was in Phoenix, because we had to live in Phoenix for 4 months. While I was going through treatment. I was only in the hospital 3 weeks, which is actually pretty good. Most people are in 4 to 5 weeks, and my blood counts came up quickly. So I got to go stay in our little casita, which was on the Mayo Clinic property, which was just lovely. Big kitchen. This was, of course, the thing that I wanted to know, right? Is what's the kitchen situation? Because you're sharing it's not a little casita, it's a big casita with basically 6 hotel style rooms with private bathrooms, and then you share a big kitchen. And so the kitchen has 2 stoves, 2 refrigerators, two of everything, 2 sinks, 2 dishwashers. And I was like, okay, I think that probably I can make this work, and I did. Once I was able to get back on, it was kind of a breeze. The other people in the casita kind of got used to me, the times that I was going to be in the kitchen doing my thing, which is I'm an early eater. I eat at 6 a.m., 11 a.m., and 5 p.m. So, and there was just a lot of support. Wade brought me food the whole time I was in the hospital. He helped weigh and measure and brought me my food while I was in there. And I guess he's a very outgoing person. And so he got to know all the people at the casita, and they all learned what I do. And by the grace of God, there were two other people there going through the same procedure that I was going through. And one of them actually even had the same weird, rare diagnosis that I had. So, yeah, so it was pretty traumatic, honestly. For a time when I got out of the hospital, I was having these ridiculous anxiety attacks, just panic that I was going to fall asleep and not be able to shift my body so that I could breathe. That if my face was in the pillow, that I was going to suffocate. And my body felt that. My brain was like, that's probably not going to happen. But I was so weak that I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to move. So that first, I want to say, I had the transplant on April 9th. I got out of the hospital April 23rd. And by the beginning of June, I was able to start walking some. And so we started walking every morning. At first, just across the courtyard, worked up slowly to doing a half a mile in the mornings. And we built some really good habits while we were there. I stopped drinking diet soda because after the chemo, I couldn't take it. Anything that was too sweet or very fatty, I couldn't do. And so it changed a lot of my gray sheet eating habits for the better. Um, I was off, our abstinent morning beverage. I was even off that, which is weird and miraculous. For about 2 months, I didn't have any. Now I'm back up to that, but the diet soda thing didn't didn't come back, and I'm grateful because it was a very expensive habit. I had an expensive diet soda habit. I was spending a couple $100s a month on that, and that's the last thing we need to do right now because I'm not working, and I'm our primary. Well, I just started back to work 2 weeks ago, just a few hours a week. I'm not working enough to support us, and I was our primary financial support prior to all of this. So we don't need to be doing that. But we're still walking every day, and now I can walk as far as like 3.5 to 4 miles in the morning. So it's just persistence. It's just, keeping on doing the drill day after day, just like we do in Gray Sheet. I guess I'll go back a little bit because it seems like I still have some time. That's my story of how I got where I am right now. I kind of had a story very similar to everybody else's. I overate as a kid. If I went to a birthday party, the only thing that was important to me was the stuff we don't eat. I didn't even remember the kid's name half the time. It was all about the treats, so to speak. And I figured out when I was about 10 years old that this was an addictive process. My mom was in nursing school and she was sharing what she was learning because I was interested, even at age 10, and all that stuff. And she was talking about alcoholism. And I thought to myself, I was walking to school one day and I thought to myself, that's what I do with the food. When I eat, I can't stop eating. Even if it's something, quote unquote healthy, I can't stop. But what are you going to do, right? I mean, you can't not eat. And I didn't have a solution. And I tried everything, just like most of us have. The only thing that helped, and this was probably 4 years, 5 years before I found Gray Sheet, the only thing that seemed to help was very low carb eating. And so I figured out that the actual addictive substance was grains and sugars. Because once I did that, I was able to do that. But if I slipped at all, I was completely off to the races. The problem was I was still binging on low carb foods. And so eventually I was on this message board. So, carry the message wherever you go, I guess, because just by being what you are. This lady used to post a lot like anybody else posted, but at the end of her, when she signed, it would say, I don't eat no matter what, and then have the Gray Sheet website. And that's how I found Gray Sheet. And I got a sponsor, and I was on, like, within 2 days, I was going to meetings every day and I was on the food plan. And I did not have a break in my abstinence until the chemo. I did 20 years back to back, by the grace of God, one day at a time, just because I was so relieved to have any kind of solution. I had tortured my body so much, and I was so tired of that. I didn't even want the food anymore. And I was truly desperate. I was willing to do anything. And I have some other addictive issues where I don't have that kind of desperation, and those have come to light recently. And I know the difference now, and how the gift of desperation is a true gift. That willingness to do anything and everything, including changing how I socialize. That's a big one, right? And just being straight up with my friends. I have to do this thing because I have an eating disorder. And most of the people who know me, it was
5
as simple as
minutes.
that. Thank you. Most of the people who know me, it was as simple as that. And I didn't have to go into depth. Some of them asked me, some of them were curious, in which case I give as much information as they seem to be interested in having. I don't give more information than they're interested in having. They ask questions, I answer questions. It's okay. I'm not shy about it, but I don't feel the need to overshare or push. I'm just there to answer questions. And I know, like many of us do, I know, a dozen people off the top of my head who have weight problems and health problems because of their weight problems. And, none of them, actually, some of them have never even asked me about what I do at all, even though they know me well. And they've been sort of almost family to us for decades. They don't ask. There's one person in particular I'm thinking of. And I know she's supportive to me, but I think that there's a certain level of, I don't think I can do that. So I don't really want to talk about it, which I understand. It's a tough situation to be in, and I feel for her. And I know that that would be me if I didn't have Gray Sheet. I'd be 350 pounds with knees that I couldn't get operated on because I was too fat. And, just so on and so forth, and I'd be eating myself into an early death. And, um, you know, instead I got Gray Sheet Abstinent, and I got very, very healthy, and all my numbers are lovely. And then I got cancer. So life happens whether you're doing Gray Sheet or not, right? We talk about that a lot. And the good news is I am in remission, which happens right away. If you do a bone marrow transplant, you either are or you aren't in remission pretty quickly. And all of my blood cells are now from the donor line, which means that there's none of the cancerous cells, none of the genetically mutated cells left in my bone marrow. It was the stem cells that were mutated, not the blood cells, but the stem cells make the blood cells. And so my bone marrow still has scarring in it, but that will remodel with time. My hemoglobin and red blood cells are going to be low for a while. That's normal, but not low enough to need transfusions. My immune system's kind of coming back up to speed. My immediate defense systems are on board. My learned immunities, like how vaccines work and all that, those are still low on purpose so that I don't get, the new bloodstream doesn't reject my tissues, because that can happen. It's almost like the new bloodstream doesn't recognize your cells and it attacks. So far, none of that. So far, I haven't had any of those, follow-up problems that can happen. And we caught it early. My doctors supported me in doing the stem cell transplant right away. And we were on board for pretty much from the beginning to do it, sooner rather than later. So I was young and pretty healthy, except for tired. I've been tired for like 3 years. And I already have the energy that I had before the stem cell transplant. And they had told me that after a year, only about 60% of people are back to their pre-transplant energy levels. I'm at 6 months right now, or I will be in about a week. And so I really couldn't ask for anything more in terms of recovery on many levels, my food recovery, my cancer recovery. It's been amazing. And I've learned, as far
When you're
as, thank you, I'll just be real quick. I've done a fair amount of step work, and then I've like sort of let go of it. I do a little inventory every morning, and that's helpful. I journal every morning. But what I wanted to say is that through this process, I've always been shy and a little more introverted. I mean, I'm actually really comfortable speaking in public, but if you get me one on one, I never know what to say. Um, and through this process, our friends held fundraisers for us and raised, I couldn't believe how much money they raised and how many people came out of the woodwork to support us. And so it really made me think about the ways that I do or don't support other people. Like I never donated to fundraisers before. And it wasn't just a neutral thing. It was a little bit of a judgment about people asking for money. And now I do. I'm going to pay that forward. I think it's really important for me to pay that forward. So that's part of working the steps is doing the next right thing. So I think that's my time. Thanks so much, everybody. And I don't eat no matter what.